Well, good Monday morning to you. Welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Doctors Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Calamarain Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. We do this every Monday morning. In just case you're just tuning in, it is a live show and it is a live call-in show. So we invite you to call in and ask questions regarding our topic or anything regarding your health, because that's what this show is all about, helping you live a healthier lifestyle. Our phone lines are 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Our topic of this week is your thyroid. What is the thyroid and what does it do?
Well, you know, a lot of people call it the master gland because it literally sets the metabolic rate for the body. Kind of controls what's going on, makes sure everything's working correctly and so on, monitoring stuff. So it's a pretty important little gland. It really is.
Little doohickey.
Little doohickey, yeah, right.
Yeah, everything in the body has to have thyroid hormone to function properly. Right. Mm-hmm. So your thyroid, that's one reason they call it the master gland, is because it affects everything.
Right.
So everything
kind of like the brain
can be right. You know, brain's probably even maybe a little bit more important, but the brain tells the thyroid what to do.
Yeah.
So the brain does put out message to tell the thyroid whether it needs more thyroid, less thyroid. So it's one of the values that's checked when checking the thyroid is a TSH, which is a thyroid stimulating hormone.
Right.
And it comes from the pituitary.
Okay.
In the brain.
In the brain. So when you get your TSH checked, you're not checking the thyroid.
Nope.
You are actually checking the brain's message to the thyroid.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. It's very interesting because a lot of people that people, our audience out there, they don't understand what all's involved in it. In other words, there's more than one little blood value that you have to look at. You have to look at your TSH, like she talked about, which is the brain telling the thyroid, okay, do this, do that. And then, of course, the brain's monitoring everything constantly, so it knows if the hormones are getting a little bit low, and if they are, it tells the thyroid to make more, that kind of thing. But then you have to look at your T4, your T3, T3 being the active hormone. That's the one that actually does the job of turning things on, turning things off. And it's real important. Yeah, very important, and a lot of times overlooked. They just don't check it as often as they really probably should.
And TSH is what's checked the most, but if the brain is having a little bit of a malfunction, then it may tell you something that's really not the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem with just checking a TSH, which is what most people have done when they go have lab work done.
And we see it all.
We never check a TSH alone, ever. I tell people you don't want just a TSH. No. You don't know what's going on. But a TSH, yes, a lot of the times it might tell you, because if you're not getting enough, the number goes up. Mm-hmm. If you're getting too much, the number goes down. But then what if the pituitary is not working properly? Mm-hmm. And the pituitary itself has a problem? The TSH is not going to really tell you what the thyroid's doing, because it's malfunctioning. And the only way you know that is to actually check more numbers with it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing we always tell people is a thyroid, you never want just a TSH, because it really does not always tell you. I've seen some.
Doesn't give you the full story.
No, it doesn't. And like I said, a lot of times maybe it would. But again, you don't know. Is the T4 on the lower end? Is the T3 on the lower end? It makes a difference which one. Mm-hmm. Because the thyroid itself produces T4. Then T4 is converted then into T3, into the more active, usable thyroid hormone. So, the question is, if it's not right, is it because you're not producing T4, or is it because you're not converting it into T3?
Wow. And
it makes a difference. And you don't know that without checking the values. So really, with the thyroid, lab work is really the way to know what's going on.
And it's really important to do the whole thing. You get the whole picture. In other words, like you said, if you just take your TSH, well, you know what the brain's doing. What's thyroid doing? And we see this all the time. People come in, they've had their TSH checked, and they say, well, they checked my thyroid. And we'll explain to them, no, they really checked your brain, they didn't check the thyroid. And once they grasp that concept, it's like, well, why didn't they check the thyroid? Good question. But it really needs to be checked. I mean, probably because of money or whatever. But needless to say, it needs to be checked. And we do this all the time. We see so many times people are coming in with a fairly normal looking TSH, but the T3 or the T4s, something's off there. And because they've got symptoms.
They still have symptoms, yeah.
The symptoms can be anything from And, you know,
That was going to be my next question. What are the
I hate to say this one, but it could be weight gain. Don't think your thyroid's the only thing that's making you gain weight, okay?
Yeah, it's not the only thing, because everybody thinks it's their thyroid just because they're gaining weight, but it's not always.
But it
can be, though.
It can be. Hair loss. You know, one of the problems with thyroid if dysfunction is hair loss, and one that you'll see quite often is the eyebrows will start thinning on the edges.
On the edges.
And the next thing you know, they've got a real bushy the actual eyebrow right in the center. There's nothing on the sides.
There's nothing on the sides.
Yeah. And that's a pretty good indicator that, you know.
But I mean, thyroid, there's so many: dry skin, constipation, fatigue. It can do hair loss. I mean, that's another thing. That it's not always, when your hair's falling out, it's not always a thyroid, but yes,
Male
it can
pattern baldness doesn't count.
No, it does not.
No.
That's different. It is hormonal.
That's what got me. Male
it's
pattern
usually
baldness.
hormonal, but a different type of hormone.
It's genetic.
So that is different. So but there is so many things that the thyroid controls. And that's what, and this month is Thyroid Awareness Month.
Right.
And a lot of people do know somewhat about the thyroid. They just don't know the details about the thyroid. Like I said, especially thinking that they got their thyroid checked when they have their TSH checked.
Right.
Okay.
I have a story that is just a quick story on somebody that it proves the TSH alone don't do it. It was the worst case I have ever seen. There was a young girl, she was 24 years old. She was totally normal until she was 20. At 20 years old, she couldn't function anymore. She couldn't think, she couldn't do her schoolwork, she had to drop out of college, the whole thing. Completely dysfunctional. They had her on every psychiatric drug there was because they couldn't find what was wrong. And they actually just kept, saying, well, it must be psychiatric. Well, she never got better. Well, finally, a friend of hers, when she was visiting, talked her into coming to us and say, you got to go have their lab work done. They check more. Well, her TSH was perfect, right in the middle, perfect, optimal, exactly where you want it. Mm-hmm. Her thyroid hormones were critical. And when we get critical values, it means it can kill you.
Wow.
She had 0 thyroid hormone in her body, none. And yes, and that's a big case. And initially we thought you got to go have an MRI of the pituitary, make sure there's no tumor, and it wasn't. It just wasn't functioning properly. It was just a malfunction, and she was perfectly fine once she got thyroid hormone, and it had been 4 years.
Wow.
So, but they had checked her thyroid 5 times, but they only checked a TSH. Yep.
Well,
Yep.
All right, we have a question, and we're going to get to this question. We're going to take a break first. We'll get to your question in just a few moments. It's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. You're listening, or you're viewing the live show this morning with Doctor's Nutrition. And welcome back. It's our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show, and we're talking about the thyroid this morning and the important role that it plays in our everyday life. But we have a question from someone. Do transdermal patches work, and do you sell any of them at your store?
It's a good delivery system.
It is. And it depends on what you're trying to deliver.
Right.
That is the thing, because some things will go well transdermally and some things won't. We don't have a lot of the patches, but we do have some of the transdermal creams.
Right.
Where it actually, you rub it on your skin and it soaks in. So we have the hormone, some of the hormonal creams like that, and then we do have magnesium that actually is transdermal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yep.
Another question. Can you take a thyroid pill on an empty stomach?
You should.
Or is it better to take 30 minutes before a meal with water?
You should take it on an empty stomach.
Empty stomach is best for thyroid because the thyroid binds to certain nutrients, especially calcium and iron.
Yeah.
And if it binds to it, it just won't absorb properly. So I always tell people it's best to take your thyroid medicine the minute you wake up. And you do want to wait at least 30 minutes or more. Mm-hmm. I mean, probably more if it's got calcium and iron in it for absorption.
Yeah.
So it is very important to actually take thyroid on an empty stomach.
Yeah, that's always a big issue, occasionally. And just not too long ago, I had a lady that was doing this. She's taking thyroid hormone. We checked her thyroid just routinely and doing some other stuff, and her thyroid was off. And I had in her sheet that she'd filled out, it said that she was taking thyroid hormone. I said, "You're taking a pretty good bit of thyroid now. How long have you done that?" And she told me, she said, "Yeah, they keep up in it, blah blah blah." And I said, "Okay, well." Didn't think much about it because I think most people that have they've been schooled, if you will, take it on an empty stomach. They never told her that. So she was taking it with breakfast and, when she'd eat. And she was taking this really big dose. And I said, well, let's try cutting it back and take it, an empty stomach. For 30 days later, she was taking way too much thyroid, so we had to cut it way back. And it's simply because she was taking it inappropriately. So empty stomach.
Yeah, empty stomach if you're taking it, and like I said, and if for some reason you do start taking it differently, have it checked and talk with your doctor about changing the dosage if it gets too much.
Right.
You always got to know if it's too much or too little, because actually everybody thinks of hypothyroid. Let's talk about hyperthyroid for a minute.
I was going to say, what's the difference between the two?
There's
Big
the bad
difference.
boy. There's
Now,
the bad boy.
hyperthyroid, I mean, no doubt, thyroid can be dangerous because you can get to critical values and you can get so where you even have organ failure because you don't have enough thyroid.
Right.
But hyperthyroid is very dangerous up front. It doesn't take long term of having it. It makes your heart race. It actually makes more weight loss, but not always. It makes your hair fall out just like hypo. So sometimes, you know, like I said, there's definitely a lot of symptoms that go along with hyper. And hyper can become a more dangerous immediate thing.
Right.
Because I've seen people where their heart rate is off the chart because of hyperthyroid. Now, it is something that has to be medically treated. You know, when we have somebody with hyperthyroid, we do send them out immediately.
Yeah.
So they do need to go see a doctor because you got to figure out what's going on.
What are some of the first signs that you're having problems with your thyroid?
You know, the first signs are kind of tough because it could be something simple. You know, it could be that you're just a little bit more tired than normal, can't seem to get your energy levels up. It could be that you're starting to lose hair. See that a lot, especially females. Now, guys, for some reason, don't care.
They don't notice maybe as much. Maybe they don't notice as much.
They don't notice as much, right? But that female, now, if she starts losing hair, especially if she had thick, pretty hair before, she starts losing a little bit, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. And I understand that. Then, you know, or it could be something that simple, and then it could be, you know, something that, like for instance, you know, several years ago I had a patient that her only sign, she really didn't have hair loss, she really didn't have any of the other symptoms. Her biggest problem was she couldn't control her cholesterol, and they just kept upping her dose of statin drugs till she was on a massive dose. And, you know, of course, they'd never checked her thyroid. We checked her thyroid, it was all messed up. Fixed her thyroid, all of a sudden her cholesterol plummeted, and they had to start cutting her cardiologist started cutting way back on her thyroid, on her statin meds, because, you know, all of a sudden she didn't have any cholesterol.
That is another symptom.
Yeah.
A sudden raise of cholesterol is a symptom of low thyroid.
Right.
And then you have these people with overactive thyroid, their cholesterol will be real low, and once they get that treated, their cholesterol starts going up. So it is tied together. So I always say if you have high cholesterol, you need to have that thyroid checked, especially as people get older.
Yes.
If they complain of symptoms of hair loss and weight gain and fatigue, they just blame it on getting old. They don't look at the thyroid. Thyroid is one of those glands that actually decreases function with age. We see many people in the 80s and 90s need a little bit of thyroid.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
Another viewer with a question. I'm currently taking thyroid pills. I have a tumor that my doctors might think is cancerous, but can't get to it because it is behind a blood vessel. Should I have my thyroid removed or just keep taking thyroid pills?
I mean, I think if they think, I mean, they can tell more by imaging if it looks like it's possible cancerous. Yeah. If they truly think it's cancerous, I would get another opinion. I'd go see somebody else. Sometimes when you go to some of these specialty hospitals around the country, they can get to things that maybe locally they can't.
Right.
So I would pay attention to it. I wouldn't just keep taking thyroid and ignore it.
Well, I mean, take your thyroid, but at the same time.
Oh yeah, keep taking the thyroid medicine, but I would have that checked out further.
And you know, I hate to say this on TV, but everybody says, well, you know, where do I get a second opinion? Out of town. You don't want to stay in town and get a second opinion because, you know, everybody's kind of in the same part. You know, if you go to Mobile, go to New Orleans, go somewhere like that.
Yeah, we're close enough to a couple big cities that might have a little bit more
specialties.
Yeah. And so go see if somebody else, what they think.
Exactly.
That's what I would say, and not us because that's not our specialty.
No.
But I would say definitely go get it checked out if it's possible that it's cancerous.
Is thyroid issues is something we can inherit?
Yes.
the susceptibility to it for
Yes,
sure.
susceptibility.
Yeah.
You know, like we say, always say, there's genetics and then there's epigenetics. So you can have the genetics for it, but if you do the right things epigenetically, you don't have to get it.
Right.
But if you do the same patterns that your family did, or maybe have the same diet, or maybe have the lack of iodine, or maybe have the, you know, that makes a difference. Because iodine is essential for thyroid. Essential. And believe it or not, we're in an area that shouldn't have a lack of iodine, but almost everybody we check their iodine levels, they're low.
Really?
It's really kind of funny
fish?
because
We should seafood.
Well, seafood.
Seafood, yeah.
Seafood.
Mostly shellfish is probably going to get.
Shellfish is
Shrimp.
higher in iodine.
Everybody
Than,
loves
shrimp.
Yeah.
Crawfish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shellfish has more iodine than fish, but we see it here. So I know if people here have it, people all over the country are even worse. And when you hear of goiters, a lot of times that is an iodine deficiency. And iodine plays a role in a lot of other health issues, not just thyroid.
Right.
So iodine is important just for health.
Right. Yeah, like I said,
But
not just the thyroid.
But you have to have iodine and tyrosine in order to make thyroxine, which is T4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We're about to get into our last segment. It's 17 minutes after 9 o'clock here on this Monday morning. And we'll be back with more questions and this week's special. It's 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, and it's our final segment of this morning's Doctor's Nutrition Show. Let's go ahead and look at what this week's special is.
Yeah, this week's special, 25% off of our Thyroid Build formulation. This is a nutrient package we put together. It's got all the nutrients, including that iodine that we just talked about momentarily ago, and then also things like your selenium and other nutrients that are specifically needed by that thyroid to function normally. And then I'll let Janine tell you about the thyroid panel.
Yep, the thyroid panel that we do, it has every test for the thyroid. I mean, just about. Our regular panels always have thyroid, but they don't have as much as the expanded thyroid panel. Our regular panel, we do the free T3, T4, TSH. That's on every panel we do. The expanded thyroid panel does your TSH, it does your total T4, free T4, total T3, free T3. It does your thyroid antibodies to see if you actually have something like Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune, because that can make your thyroid go up and down. And then it has a reverse T3, which reverse T3 a lot of times happens if you have too much stress. And then it also checks the stress hormone, because the stress hormone going up plays a huge role in the thyroid. So it does check a lot, our expanded thyroid panel. And like I said, normally it's 115, this week it's 90. And just to mention, the Thyroid Build is something that pretty much just about anybody can take Thyroid Build.
Yeah.
You don't have to know that you have a thyroid problem to take it. It just gives you the nutrients needed to produce it and convert it, and it stimulates it. It does have your tyrosine, iodine, selenium, but then it has something like Bacopa, which actually has been shown to stimulate the thyroid production and also is good for memory. So Thyroid Build is a product that you can take without having a medical thyroid problem.
Right.
Lab work's always the best to see if there really is, because sometimes it's not enough if the problem is really bad. So if the problem is a medical thyroid problem, it might not be enough in Thyroid Build.
Right.
So, but it's something that anybody can take and be safe.
Right.
If untreated, what can happen?
In which, were the hypo or hyper?
Either one.
Well, they're different things.
I'm sure the hyper is worse.
It's worse. It can be.
It's like hypertension,
Right.
For those who have
And it can
hyper-
actually
It causes hypertension.
that. Yeah.
That's one of the big things that they have to treat while trying to control hyperthyroid is to bring down the blood pressure, because blood pressure goes sky high with hyperthyroid.
And our heart rate is
the heart rate goes really high with hyper. So
hypo, I mean, if you don't have enough, a thyroid hormone to set that metabolic rate, so on a cellular level for everything in your body. Think about your liver; it just can't function properly. Your liver can actually start to fail in doing its job.
We have had some over the years. Now, it's rare. Now, the severe thyroid so bad that it can kill you is a rare thing, but it does happen. And we've had a few over the years that we do lab work on these people, and I'm not kidding, the organs are failing. They don't know. I had somebody sent one time by another doctor in Slidell that I'm friends with, and because the guy didn't have insurance and he wanted him to have it checked. And I thought the guy was kind of mentally retarded because mentally he wasn't there. And the guy that sent him said, no, 2 weeks ago he was the life of the party. And I was like, what? And he's like, that's why I sent him. And he had no thyroid. He was one that had the dangerous thyroid where the organs were going. And if you'd have listened to him,
think.
he swore it was his allergies causing the problem.
Wow.
And it wasn't. So that's why I say you gotta check.
Wow. Okay. Another question. Why doesn't insurance cover natural care as opposed to having, roll it up a little bit, please.
Yeah, there we
You
go.
go to
There
the
you go.
doctor's office for care.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's all about the money.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, they pay for illness. They don't pay for wellness.
We don't have health care in America.
Natural care is more wellness. It is actually more keeping well, staying well, doing things, you know, and you can't say that no insurance pays for natural care at all, because there are some things that are covered. It just gets to where, like anything, they would never let you check everything.
Right.
And just check it under, just doing it because we want to see what's going on.
Right.
Unfortunately, everything has to have a diagnostic code and an issue and a problem for the insurance companies to pay it. You can't just say we're checking for wellness.
Right. You
The
know,
wellness checks are very small. Everybody does have wellness checks, but they check very little what
Yeah.
they allow for wellness.
you know, when it goes back to years and years ago, I've been doing this for a long time, and we had an ICD, which is a code for what kind of diseases or what kind of problems you're having. When I started practicing, I think the ICD-9 codes had somewhere around 10,000 different codes for various problems that people could have. Today, the ICD-10 or 11 or whatever we're on is like 150, approaching 200,000 codes. So the doctor has to pick out of the air or something. He's got to have he or she has to have a code to justify what they do to you. And that's the problem, because it's so hard to figure. Out of 150,000 codes, oh my God, you could have anything. You know, and if you pick the wrong code, insurance denies it. So it's a real problem. It's a game. You know, we don't have health care in America, we have sick care. If you get sick enough, they'll take care of you.
Yep.
Wow. 25 after 9. What are some signs and symptoms of IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome? Do you offer anything that can help with IBS?
Yes.
Yes, and IBS can be, you can have constipation, you can have diarrhea, it can just be bloating, it can be hurt, it's just that irritable bowel.
Yeah.
It's very irritable, whichever way it is.
It could be either way.
It's
Yeah.
irritable.
It's irritable.
So it can be any symptom of digestive issues, but you know, when it's chronic is when they tend to call it IBS.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it gets messed up because of something you ate, or you know, a little bit of food poisoning or something like that, but when it's chronic, they consider it to be IBS when they've ruled out everything else.
Right.
And we do have things that help IBS depending on which way it is.
Exactly. It depends on whether it's the constipation side or whether it's the diarrhea side, because you can have both. And sometimes digestive enzymes will help tremendously.
Digestive enzymes and probiotics are where
Yeah.
you start.
It's where
If
you
you have the
start.
chronic diarrhea, we'll do the GI essentials. And honestly, food allergies play a big role in IBS. So we do food allergy testing as well. When nothing else phases it, then you got to figure out what you're eating that's causing it.
Right.
Is there anything that we can do early on to keep a healthy thyroid? I mean, diet? Does diet
Well,
play
I
a
mean,
role in
Again,
it?
make sure you get your nutrients that it takes to make it.
Yeah.
To make sure that you get the iodine, and some tyrosine comes from protein, and that's the kind of the selenium, which is a mineral. That all that is essential in keeping the thyroid healthy.
I think that's probably the key, is getting the right nutrients.
And
keeping
stress makes it worse too, so controlling
Well, yeah.
stress, but that's hard to do sometimes.
That's real hard to do. But keeping the right nutrients is a big thing.
About 45 seconds left. Can you talk a little bit about Graves' disease?
Well, it'd be a little bit if you got 45 seconds, I promise you.
I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? Next week is Open Line Monday.
Yeah.
We'll start out with
We'll start out with
that
Graves'.
question. I
Yep.
will make a note of it, and we'll start out with that question next week, because we are just about to run out of time. But again, next Monday is Open Line Monday, so we invite you to call in with any question that you have regarding any kind of health issues, or helping you live a healthier lifestyle.
Right.
Hopefully, if you or yourself are having some thyroid problems, or know someone that does, today's show was a big help for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. You can also find some great information on doctorsnutrition.com, or find their page on Facebook. We'll see you next week, 9 o'clock on the Doctor's Nutrition Show.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.